car doctor under the hood, and it is just, again, some of the questions I get on a regular basis. So the three most common reasons why people call AAA, people lock their keys in the car. They still do that on a regular basis. Their battery goes dead, or they get a flat tire. And people ask me sometimes, I'm planning a long road trip. What should I do to try to have things go trouble-free? Well, if you can make sure your battery's in good shape, you can make sure your tires are in good shape, that's really going to help, because those are a couple of the reasons that we go out to rescue people on a regular basis. So if you can, batteries typically in New England or in the Northeast, I guess, last a little bit under 5 years. That's on average. I have a car right now that the battery is about 7 or 8 years old. It still tests out fine. If you live in a hot weather state like Florida or Arizona, battery life can be as short as just a couple of years, because the heat affects the battery. The heat affects the chemical composition inside the battery and can cause the battery to deteriorate a little bit faster. When it comes to locking your keys in your car, well, try not to do it, but if possible, if you have a spare key, and if you have a push button start car or a car with a key fob, like a lot of people do today. Some people don't realize there's actually a little hidden key in there. I was talking to a woman with the Subaru back probably a year ago now. And she said, how do I get in my car if the battery goes dead? And I said, you realize if you push this little button on your key fob, there's a little key in here, popped out the key. And I said, on your car, there's probably a little covering over where the keyhole is. And there's probably only one just on the driver's side. And you can actually unlock your car and get in it. And she wasn't aware of that. How often should you change your oil? There used to be an old rule: change your oil every 3 months or every 3,000 miles, whichever came first. That's an old rule. That's really false today. We don't really think that's necessary anymore. Today's oil is much better than it's ever been. Today's oil filters are better than they've ever been. But more importantly, the gasoline that we use today, unleaded gasoline, doesn't contaminate the engine oil the way it used to. So follow your owner's manual, whatever it says. Can you change your oil every 3,000 miles if you want to? Yes. Do you need to? Not at all. Change the oil in your car when it needs to be. Generally, that's somewhere between 5 and even up to 10,000 miles. One of our family cars is a Volkswagen. The oil gets changed about every year. It doesn't go 10,000 miles, but it gets changed about every year, just to make sure we stay up on top of it. Synthetic oil, is it worth the extra money? A lot of cars use synthetic oil. Some cars use synthetic oil blend. I just happen to go online and pop a couple of coupons out that I happen to see. One of them was home of the $39.99 conventional oil change, typical of what some of the quick lube places charge. And then the other one is a synthetic oil change, and in this case, not actually a bad price for a factory oil filter and 5 quarts of synthetic oil at $90. I really do feel synthetic oil is worth the extra money. We actually have 3 cars in our household. All 3 of them use synthetic oil. Is there different kinds of synthetic oil? There is. But I tend to use synthetic oil in everything. Even a lawnmower, I would use synthetic oil, and synthetic oil just works better in cold weather. Protects the engine better against wear and tear. Just all the way around, synthetic oil will help your car last longer, help the engine last longer, because it does offer better protection. And will it give you better gas mileage? No, it won't. Years ago, they used to say, oh, synthetic oil will give you better gas mileage. The other thing they used to say years ago was, once you switch to synthetic oil, you can't go back. Well, absolutely, you can go back and forth. It doesn't matter. And again, here's the question. If I switch to synthetic oil, can I switch back? Absolutely. There's no reason why you can't. There's no reason why you would, though. But, keep in mind that synthetic oil and conventional oil are formed out of the same base products. And the picture on the left that shows the difference between synthetic and conventional oil, it shows 3 little ball bearings, and they're all the same size. To the right-hand side of that same picture, it shows different size ball bearings. That's the difference between conventional and synthetic oil. Synthetic oil is more uniform. That's why it flows easier. And we found during some tests that we did at AAA that synthetic oil outperformed conventional oil by 47% in tests. Better performance equals better engine protection. Absolutely makes sense to use synthetic oil, even though it costs a little bit more. If you're somebody who keeps your car 8, 10, 15 years, using synthetic oil, and it will help a lot. Is all gasoline created equal? So if I buy my gasoline at BJ's because it's cheaper, is that bad for the car? Is it not as good as buying Mobil or Shell or Citgo? Well, there was a time where I thought all gasoline was created equal. And it starts off equal. All gasoline is created from the same sort of base stock of gasoline. What makes gasoline different between Shell and Mobil and others is the ingredients they add to it. So it's just like, pick anything, a spaghetti sauce recipe. It all kind of starts with the same base, but how it ends up with at the end depends on what you put in it. And gasoline's the same way. There is something called top tier gasoline. This is gasoline that is that has additional additives in it. And what we have found is that top tier gasoline will keep your engine cleaner, will give you better engine performance, and will it give you better gas mileage? No. Will it make the engine run better? Possibly. And what you see here in this picture is two valves from an engine. And valves are what allow the air to come in and out of the engine. So an engine in a gasoline car, is nothing more than a pump. It sucks in air and pushes out air out of the tailpipe. So as part of the combustion process, the valves in combustion chamber where everything takes place can get carbon, can get dirty. And that dirt and carbon is I think it's the second hardest material known to man. I think there's diamonds and then carbon. And carbon can build up inside an engine and it can keep these valves from closing. Top tier gasoline will keep the valves clean. These two valves came from a test that AAA did. We ran an engine on a special engine dynamometer, which is a thing that measures engine horsepower and wear and tear and all that kind of stuff. And we let the engine run for a long period of time with top tier gasoline, without top tier gasoline. The valve on the right with the gunk on it is top tier gasoline. So top tier gasoline is better. You don't have to use it all the time. So if you want to, go to, the discount gas station, but maybe once a month or so, if you go to a top tier gas station, that can be Shell, it can be Mobil, but go to toptiergas.com, find which gas stations are listed. A Citgo, I think, still is. Their BP, I think, still is. So it doesn't have to be kind of some of the name brands you may have heard of, but it has a effect where it will help keep the engine clean. So it's definitely worth getting it done. Do I need to use premium gasoline in my car? Some people feel that if you run premium gasoline in your car, your engine will be cleaner. It will last longer. It'll get better gas mileage. If you have a car that you open up the fuel door and you see something that says 91 octane recommended, no, you don't have to use 91 octane. In fact, good luck trying to find 91 octane. Most gas pumps that I go to are 87, 89, and 93. So there's no real 91. So you're forced to buy the 93 or make it yourself, mix the 87 and the 93 together and hope it comes out to 91. But if it only says recommended, you can run the lower octane gasoline. What happens? You may not get the optimum engine performance. For instance, a couple of weeks ago, I drove a Subaru WRX. WRX is sort of the hot rod version of a Subaru Impreza. It's a pretty powerful little car. It's almost 300 horsepower. And it said in the owner's manual, premium fuel recommended. What it also said was you could use lower octane fuel, but you may not get the same engine performance. And in some cases, you may not get the same fuel economy, but in a lot of cases, there can be a 50 cent per gallon difference between regular and premium, and you're not going to lose that much fuel economy to make up for that 50 cents per gallon. So if you're open up the little door where your fuel tank is and it says recommended and you've been using 91 or 93 octane because you think you should use it, you don't have to. You can use 87. Now, the middle part of the slide here where it says premium fuel required, that would be a real high performance car. That would be something like a Mercedes or a Porsche or some performance oriented car that really requires premium fuel. And if you don't use premium fuel in that car, you could damage the engine. And in turn, they can actually, if it's a brand new car and it's under warranty, they can actually see that you've not been using the correct gas with the car. They could actually void the warranty. So if you drive a sports car or high performance car and it says premium fuel required, use it. If you drive a car that says premium fuel recommended, you can put anything you want in. How often should my car's tires be rotated? You know, every 5,000, 7,000, 10,000, 20,000, or not at all. It's a good idea to rotate the tires on your car, not so much for the tire wear, which is important. If you start to see a little bit of tire wear, it's a good idea to rotate them. I haven't rotated the tires on my car, but then again, I look at my tires fairly often. I check the tire pressure about once a month. And if I started to see some signs of wear, I would rotate the tires. What's good about rotating tires is, though, once your car gets a few miles on it, it's a good excuse to get the car up in the air, look under it, check the brakes, check the steering system. So if you have a car with 30, 40,000 miles on it, rotating the tires, when you go to have that done, somebody might come out and say to you, hey, look, we had your tires off and your brakes are getting to the point where they need to be replaced, or, you know, or there's something in the suspension, or we noticed a little bit of an oil leak or something like that. So it's a good idea to have those things looked at periodically, and rotating the tires, again, good excuse to get that done. Engine coolant. How long does antifreeze last? Sometimes antifreeze is called permanent antifreeze. Engine coolant is called permanent antifreeze. There's 3 pictures. 2 out of 3 are pretty vintage. The middle one that says permanent antifreeze. The first one says American alcohol antifreeze. That was from a I was at some kind of antique store and I saw the sign. It was a thermometer actually that the garages would put in their waiting room, I guess, if they had them back then, and it had a thermometer on it and it would tell you that, you know, protect your car down to below 0. And alcohol was the primary ingredient in antifreeze way back when. Alcohol would evaporate, and over the course of maybe 6 or 8 months, it would evaporate, and you could run a risk of the engine actually freezing up in cold weather. Then they came out with something called ethylene glycol antifreeze, referred to as permanent antifreeze, which wasn't really permanent. It was usually good for a few years. And then antifreeze has changed again. And the picture on the right is a kind of generic antifreeze or engine coolant. It's pre-mixed 50-50 antifreeze and water. It's good for, it says on the bottle, 5 years. I have seen cars now that actually don't recommend. Audi, for instance, doesn't recommend replacing the antifreeze unless there's a leak or shows some form of contamination. So depending on the car, it may need to get done, it may not. But as a general rule, maybe every 5 years is a good idea to replace the engine coolant in your car. Does brake fluid need to be changed? This has come up a lot in the past few years. We never changed brake fluid in cars. The only time we'd ever change brake fluid was if we actually replaced some part of the hydraulic system of the brakes, and we actually had to put new brake fluid in. That's about the only time brake fluid ever got changed. But brake fluid, by composition, tends to accumulate moisture. That moisture can be the enemy of a brake system. Subaru recommends, not requires, but recommends brake fluid changes every 3 years or every 36,000 miles. We have done some testing at work and found that brake fluid actually does benefit from being changed every 3 years or so. It will accumulate moisture. That moisture can cause rust, and in performance situations, that moisture can actually cause some sort of brake fade, sort of a a weak feeling brake pedal. So replacing the brake fluid in a car every 3 or 4 years. If you're having your brakes done, if you brakes are being replaced, maybe talk to the folks at the same time about doing a brake fluid change when they're replacing things like brake pads and brake rotors. This comes up right around the holidays a lot of times. If I add an aftermarket product like a remote car starter, will I void my car's warranty? I was at a car dealership with somebody once, and they wanted to get a remote car starter, and the dealership gave them a price. And they said, well, that sounds kind of expensive. I'll have the folks down the street do it. They're a lot cheaper. And the salesperson said, oh, that's not a good idea. If you put in their remote car starter, you'll void the car's warranty. Well, you won't void the car's warranty. As long as it's installed properly, you're protected by something called the Magnuson-Moss law, which basically says something like, if your car has a product that you want to put in it, and the manufacturer says that it will void the warranty, they have to give you that product for free. And you're protected by that Magnuson-Moss law. What was interesting about the vehicle that the person said it would void the warranty, they didn't install their own remote car starters. They actually sent them out to be installed. And the same company that this person was thinking about going to get the remote car starter was the same company that actually installed remote car starters for the car dealership. So it was a bunch of nonsense. You can install a remote car starter. It won't void your warranty. Same thing if you're concerned about things like, vehicle theft and you want to add to some sort of alarm system, you want to upgrade your stereo system in your car. As long as it's installed properly, they'll never void the warranty. Some cars have a part called a timing belt. A timing belt is a rubber belt that runs around the inside of the engine, and if it fails, it can do some serious damage to the car. Some cars, the rubber timing belt can get changed as early as every 30,000 miles. Other cars like Hondas can go 105,000 miles, if not even a little bit longer. Cars in between, things like Hyundais and Kias, if they have rubber belts, tend to be changed in the 60 to 80,000 mile range. If you're not sure if your car has a timing belt or a timing chain, talk to your mechanic. If you want to ask me about it later, I can look it up and see if it does or it doesn't. But over time, it can fail. And when it fails, it will do catastrophic damage to the engine. So if you drive a car with 60, 70, 80,000 miles on it and you're not sure if it has a timing belt, and if you look in the owner's manual, it will tell you that it needs to be changed at a certain time. But if you don't have the owner's manual and you're not sure, have somebody look at it for you, because you don't want to end up ruining the engine. The cost of a timing belt can vary anywhere from, depending on the car, it could be a few $100s up to $1,200 or $1,500, again, depending on the car. Are there things you can do yourself? Absolutely. Checking your car's oil is easy and it's important. Engine oil, typically you let the engine run for a few minutes, let it get up to temperature, shut it off, let it sit for a minute or two, find the engine oil dipstick, pull the dipstick out, wipe the oil off of it, reinsert it, pull it back out, and there's marks on it, full, add, whatever. Nearly every car has an engine oil dipstick. Some don't. BMW, Mercedes, Porsche, they don't. You check the oil electronically with the infotainment system on the dash. But most cars do have dipsticks, and it's easy enough to check. Engines can, with these long engine oil changes, 10,000 mile oil changes, it's not unusual for a car to burn a quart of oil every, say, 1,000 or 2,000 miles. So you want to make sure that you do check the oil periodically. You might not have to change it that often, but checking and adding to it as necessary is a good idea. Checking engine coolant. This is a kind of typical, I guess, engine coolant overflow bottle. And you can see in the middle picture, it says minimum, maximum. And you just want to keep the coolant between that level. Also different kinds of engine coolant. The last time I was at an auto parts store, I think I counted 8 different kinds of engine coolant. So you want to make sure you use the right kind for your car. There are some generic kinds that They kind of break it down. This will fit all GM cars. This will fit all Asian imports. This will fit all European imports. You can get a little bit more generic, or you can go to the dealer and get the specific engine coolant. Brake fluid, same thing. Most of the brake fluid reservoirs are in the back of the engine compartment. They're translucent, so you can see the fluid level. You add to brake fluid when it's it could even turn a light on that says check brake fluid. If that's the case, that may also, they could indicate a leak. It also could just indicate your brakes are just about worn out. So if that light comes on, have it check brake lights, the red warning brake light on the dash. In fact, any red warning brake light is something that you should take care of immediately. So if you see the temperature light come on that's red, the battery light that comes on that's red, the brake light that comes on that's red, those are things you should pull over to the side of the road, shut the car off, restart it, see if the light goes off. If it does, maybe drive it safely home. If it doesn't go off, call a tow truck and get the car towed home or to your repair garage. You don't want to take a chance that because the engine's running hot or it's running low on oil, that you ended up ruining the engine because you decided to drive home. Brake fluid should only be added to from a container that's been closed, so it has a sealed top. Doesn't have to be sealed from the factory, but if you're somebody who tinkers with your car and you have brake fluid that is sitting in your garage or workshop or shed or whatever the case is, make sure the cap goes back on it every time, because brake fluid, again, does attract moisture. Check tire pressure. A simple tire pressure gauge. A lot of cars today have tire pressure monitor systems that will tell you how much air is in each tire. Some will only tell you if a tire is low. Some will tell you precisely how many pounds of air, but it's still not a bad idea to get a simple tire pressure gauge and check the tire pressure. It should be something that you check when the tires are cool. In other words, it's not after you just drove 100 miles and pulled off the highway. That isn't when you want to check tire pressure, because heat causes tire pressure to expand, go higher. So you want to check the tire pressure. Simple tire pressure gauge. This is about as simple as you can get. It's a pencil gauge. You unscrew the tire cap, push the gauge down on top of the valve stem. The little end pops out, tells you how much air is in the tire, just like checking the tires on a bicycle. Add to the correct amount of air. How much is that? It's not what it says on the side of the tire. It's what it says on the side of the car door. If you open up the driver's door, chances are there's a door placard there, a little note on the side of the door that tells you how much air to put in the tires. And you should do that again when the tires are cool. And it's not unusual to have to add air to your tires once every month or two, but check them every month, see how they're doing. Checking tire tread. Tires are considered worn out in just about every state when they get down to 2 30-seconds tread. 2 30-seconds of tread is the distance between the edge of a penny and the top of Lincoln's head. That's when a tire is completely worn out. Why there's a picture of a quarter there is that's what we recommend using now to check tire tread. The distance between the edge of a quarter and the edge of Washington's head is about 4 30-seconds of tread. Why do we say replace tires at 4 30-seconds? Because the stopping distance, especially when the tires are wet. So on a rainy day, the distance between jamming on the brakes at 60 miles an hour with a tire with 2 30-seconds versus a tire with 4 30-seconds is the distance, the length of a tractor trailer truck. So when the tires get more worn, they don't tend to stop and handle as well. So when they get down to 4 30-seconds, think about replacing them. Check and change the air filter. Cars today have typically more than one air filter. There's one for the engine and one for one for the cabin. And both of those can be changed relatively easily. I had a woman call me one day, and she was at her local car dealership, I guess, and they recommended replacing both filters, the cabin air filter and the engine air filter. And I think they wanted $150 or $80 to do it. And she said no. And she called me up and she said, "Is that reasonable?" And I said, "Well, it's expensive." She said, "Is it something I can do myself?" I said, yeah, it absolutely is. And her car was very easy to do. And I sent her the directions. I said, the engine air filter It's just a couple little clips under the hood. You take it out, you slide the new one in. Simple enough. And the cabin air filter actually sits behind the glove compartment. A little bit more complicated, but not really complicated. You just open up the glove compartment door, and there's a couple little tabs, so the door opens kind of instead of halfway, all the way open. You support it so it won't break or anything. And once you can see behind where the glove compartment storage area is, so you take everything out of the glove compartment, you'll see a little space that says cabin air filter. Couple of clips, you pop it out. Take the old filter out, put the new filter in, you're good to go. She called me up about a week later. She said she went to her local auto parts store. She put in, she asked them for the filters. They gave them to her. She went home. She had my directions written down. She replaced both filters. She called me up and she said, "You saved me about $110 because I did it myself." So again, some things you can do simple enough. Also, some Napa stores, if you're a AAA member, will also give you a discount on auto parts. I think it's 7%. Again, that stopping distance on tires, that wet stopping distance, a tire that's almost brand new, which is somewhere between 9 and 11/30 seconds of tread. If you jammed on the brakes at 60 miles an hour, it would stop in 160 feet. A tire that's about half worn down to 5:30 seconds, 195 feet. That tire that's down to 430 seconds, where we recommend replacing the tires, down to 205 feet, and the tire that's considered worn out down to 250 feet. So a tire that's, say, half worn at 530 seconds took 195 feet to stop. That tire that's still legal in every state but Hawaii, I think, which lets you go down to 132nd, took how much? 250, yeah, 60, 55 feet. So the length of a tractor trailer truck. So that would be the difference between a crash and one that didn't happen. So think about replacing your tires, replace them early. You also get a better ride. Again, what can you do to protect your car? People are keeping cars longer than they ever have. The average car on the road now is a little bit over 12 years old. So older than they've ever been. Cars are lasting longer, but what can you do to protect it? Clean it, clean it, clean it, clean it. Automatic car wash. I prefer hand washing when possible, providing there's no droughts and there's plenty of water around. And the reason I like to hand wash a car is you get to notice any little nicks and scratches and chips and all kinds of things, and maybe you can touch them up and help take care of the car. Waterless car wash. I have become, we have a water ban where I live, and I have become a fan of using waterless car wash. There's a couple of different brands. There's WROL makes one. There's another company called McGuire's, and it's for a car that's not super dirty, a little dirty. You spray it on, you use a bunch of microfiber cloths and clean the car. And it's kind of nice to use in between that more thorough washing. How about an automatic car wash? Go into a regular car wash. It's probably my least favorite choice because some automatic car washes actually, the water the car gets washed with isn't super clean. It's been recycled, which is good, but sometimes some car washes actually leave a little bit of dirt in the water, which acts like an abrasive, which actually helps take the other dirt off the car. But the idea of washing a car with kind of high pressure, dirty water, but in the wintertime, if that's your only choice, go to the automatic car wash. But don't do it on a freezing cold day, or else you won't be able to get your doors open afterwards. Waxing your car. There's all different kinds of wax: hard paste wax, liquid wax, spray wax. Use something. Again, I'm kind of the fan of that waterless car wash. It even adds a little extra protection to it at the same time. Will road salt really ruin my car? Absolutely. If you're driving around in the wintertime and they've just put a lot of salt on the road or brine on the road, it will definitely rust out your car over the long term. So definitely try to wash that off whenever you can. If you notice like a sticky white substance on your car, get the car washed. Over time, it can ruin the car. One of the other questions I get is, my lights aren't as good as I want them to be, or I can't see good at night. Can I upgrade my headlights? Sort of. This picture of this Jeep has a very bright headlight on one side, a little dimmer headlight on the other side. The one on the dimmer side is a stock headlight. The one on the right is actually an LED replacement headlight. Although you can buy them, they're not legal. There are all kinds of different headlights you can buy for cars, but you have to make sure you use the right kind, because that bright LED light, although it puts more light on the road, it doesn't put the light as focused, and it can be an issue with visibility for other drivers. So you want to make sure you use the right headlights for your car. Headlights will dim over time. Once a headlight gets to be about 2 years old, it might only have about 50 or 60% of the light output as it did when it was new. So if you don't think you can see quite as good as you used to at night, it might be your headlights are just getting old and it's time to replace them with new headlights. You can get slightly brighter headlights for your car, but they're like anything that's higher performance that tend not to last as long. So if you're okay with having to replace your headlight bulbs every couple of years, companies like GE make something called a Nighthawk bulb. Sylvania makes Silver Star bulbs that are brighter. There's different manufacturers that make different bulbs. But I don't recommend replacing non-LED bulbs with LED bulbs, because they are, again, they're not legal, and they can blind oncoming drivers. In case of emergency, this is kind of what I keep in my car in case of an emergency. I keep a little emergency kit of some sort, maybe some basic tools. I also keep in the middle, that's where it says to start dead batteries. That's a portable jump start unit. That is a little unit that is probably 6 or 7 inches long, a couple inches across, and you can actually jump start your own car with it. I keep one in all of our family cars in case I have a dead battery somewhere. Not that I don't want to call AAA, but I'd rather just jump start the car and go home by myself without having to worry. They last about 6 or so months before you need to recharge them. So periodically pull them out, plug them into however they recharge. Some recharge off the cigarette lighter plug. Most of them recharge off a computer plug, like your phone does. So that little mini USB plug, that's how you charge your phone. That's how these things charge up. And then once it's charged, it stays charged up for quite a while. I also carry a portable air compressor in each one of my family cars. In case I come out of someplace and I have a low tire, I want to be able to pump it up. I don't want to have to change a flat tire if I don't have to. I would rather pump it up, get the right amount of air in it, get it home, deal with it. Because flat tires never happen in convenient times. They tend to happen when it's raining or snowing or something. I want to air up my tire and be able to go home. As far as tools, I don't carry much anymore. That little utility tool, Leatherman thing with the pliers and lights and stuff, that's usually all the tools that I keep in my car. Maybe a little bit more, but not much more than that, because frankly, there isn't that much you can do by the side of the road anymore. So where do you get the best car advice? Well, you can ask me. Everybody, I put this guy, Uncle Frank, in here. Everybody seems to know an Uncle Frank. He's the guy who has maybe he's got in this case, the 57 Chevy and another old car in his garage, and tends to offer up a lot of car advice. No, the best place to get car advice comes right from the vehicle owner's manual. If you go to the vehicle owner's manual, that's where you can get the best car advice. In a lot of cases, I have a lot of technical databases that I use, but when somebody asks me sometimes very specific questions about certain things, I will go to the owner's manual, because that's where I find the best information comes from. So that's pretty much, I think, the end of our presentation. If people need to get a hold of me, the easiest way to do that is go to jpaul@aaanortheast.com or AAA.com/car doctor. Either one of those, you can get to me, and I'd be happy to answer your car questions. And just like today, I would be happy to stop sharing if I can. There we go. So if anyone has any questions,